Welcome to the Explainer. Have you ever actually stopped to wonder how your refrigerator or AC unit creates cold air? I mean, it kind of feels like magic, right? But spoiler alert, there's absolutely no magic involved. It's just a brilliant, brilliant feat of physics and chemistry. Today, we're dooming in on the unsung heroes making our modern comfort possible, refrigerants. We're going to break this whole thing down step by step. So even if you're completely new to the topic, by the end of this, you'll have a crystal clear understanding of exactly how this works. Let's get into it.
To keep things simple and easy to digest, we've split this up into 4 logical sections. First, defining what a refrigerant actually is. Second, the 4 steps of heat delivery. Third, their evolution and environmental impact. And finally, the specific conditions required for the perfect refrigerant.
All right, Section 1, Refrigerant, the blood of refrigerators. Let's figure out what exactly this stuff is.
At its absolute core, a refrigerant is just a heat transfer medium. Think of it like a delivery driver, but for temperature. It's a highly specialized substance that constantly circulates inside your refrigeration system, and its entire job, literally the whole shebang, is to absorb heat from a low-temperature area like the inside of your fridge or your living room, pack that heat up, drive it over to a high-temperature area outside, and just release it. That's the secret. It doesn't actually create cold out of thin air. Instead, it just absorbs heat from where you don't want it and moves it to where it doesn't matter.
Actually, a great way to think about it is like the human circulatory system. Just as blood flows through your veins to carry vital oxygen to every single part of your body, refrigerant flows through a machine's copper pipes to carry heat. Without blood, your body shuts down, right? Well, without refrigerant, your air conditioner is basically just an incredibly expensive, useless fan blowing room temperature air around.
So, now that we know what it is, let's look at how this delivery system actually works in the real world. Section 2, the 4 steps of heat delivery.
Okay, this process happens in a continuous, never-ending loop. Let's walk through it slowly so it makes perfect sense. Step 1 is the evaporator. This is the part inside your room. Cold liquid refrigerant absorbs the heat from your space, and as it absorbs that heat, it literally boils and turns into a gas. Next, step 2, the compressor. This takes that warm gas and aggressively squeezes it, just pressurizes it until it gets insanely hot, way hotter than the summer air outside. That brings us to step 3, the condenser, which sits outside your house. Because that pressurized gas is now hotter than the outdoor air, the heat naturally flows out into the breeze, and as it cools off, it turns back into a liquid. Finally, step 4 is the expansion valve. It forces that liquid through a super tiny hole, which causes a massive pressure drop. You know how spraying an aerosol can makes the nozzle feel freezing cold? It's exactly like that. The pressure drop makes the liquid ice cold again, and boom, it heads right back to the evaporator to start the whole cycle over.
Now, if you take one thing away from this, it's this. The real secret sauce making this entire 4-step cycle possible is phase change. It's that constant shifting back and forth between a liquid and a gas. When it boils from a liquid into a gas, it sponges up massive amounts of what scientists call latent heat, basically hidden heat. And when it changes back from a gas to a liquid outside, it dumps all that hidden heat into the atmosphere. It's this continuous, magical shape-shifting that does all the heavy lifting to get the heat out of your home.
But what exactly are these shape-shifting chemicals, and how have they changed over the years? Let's get into Section 3, Refrigerant Evolution for the Environment.
Humanity's quest to find the perfect cooling agent has actually spanned 5 distinct generations, and what's super fascinating here is that this evolution wasn't just about making better or colder AC units. It's been heavily driven by environmental awakenings and, honestly, global crises. It seems like every time we thought we had the perfect chemical, we uncovered some crazy new side effect.
As you can see clearly laid out here, our early solutions absolutely cooled our homes, but they accidentally triggered massive environmental issues. Back in the first generation, we used natural stuff like ammonia and CO2. Awesome for the environment, sure, but ammonia is highly toxic, and CO2 required ridiculously high, dangerous pressure. So in the 20th century, we moved to the second generation. You've probably heard of these, the famous freon gases like CFCs. At the time, they seemed like a total non-toxic miracle, but, well, they had a pretty dark side that we wouldn't discover for decades.
And that dark side? Yeah, it was the literal destruction of our planet's shield. Those second-generation CFCs contained chlorine. When that leaked, it floated all the way up into the stratosphere and systematically chewed through the ozone layer. This caused such a crisis that they were banned globally by the Montreal Protocol. In a mad dash to fix this, scientists whipped up the third-generation HCFCs. They were definitely a step in the right direction, but they still had a tiny bit of chlorine in them, so they were still doing damage.
Currently, those are undergoing a phased worldwide reduction too. We desperately needed a completely chlorine-free solution. Enter the fourth generation of refrigerants, HFCs, like R410A. In fact, this is probably what's sitting in your home AC right now. Scientists finally managed to engineer a chemical that completely eliminated chlorine. And because of that, boom, an ozone depletion potential of absolute zero. Zero! We saved the ozone layer, which was just a massive global triumph. But, you guessed it, the story doesn't end there.
Actually, scratch that happily ever after. Because while we saved the ozone, these fourth-gen chemicals had a fatal flaw of their own, a massive global warming potential, or GWP. Even though they don't touch the ozone, if they leak into the air, they act as incredibly powerful greenhouse gases. We're talking sometimes thousands of times more potent than carbon dioxide at trapping hate in the atmosphere. Because of this massive warming power, their usage is currently being heavily slashed worldwide under a new treaty called the Kigali Amendment. So yep, back to the drawing board yet again.
Which brings us to right now, today. We're seeing a massive, rapid market shift toward fifth-generation refrigerants, known as HFOs. These are the chemicals of the future. They protect the ozone layer perfectly, just like the fourth gen did, but, and here's the real game changer, they keep their global warming impact incredibly low. We're talking a GWP of under 1 in many cases. They are the new eco-friendly standard, and they're quickly becoming the go-to for new cars and big green buildings everywhere.
Now, hearing all this, you're probably thinking, why is it so hard to just make a good refrigerant? Well, let's look at Section 4, Conditions for Perfect Refrigerants.
It's so incredibly difficult because a perfect refrigerant has to check all of these ridiculously strict physical and chemical boxes all at once. First up, it needs high latent heat. That just means a tiny bit of liquid needs to absorb a massive amount of heat, which is what allows our AC units to be reasonably small. Second, moderate pressure. If the pressure's too low, outside air leaks in. If it's way too high, your copper pipes literally explode. Third, it needs a low freezing point so it doesn't just turn into a giant block of ice and clog the whole machine. Fourth is a high critical temperature, meaning it can easily turn back into a liquid even when it's absolutely scorching hot outside. And lastly, safety. It has to be totally non-toxic if it leaks in your bedroom, non-flammable, and it can't rust the inside of the machine over a 15-year lifespan. Honestly, finding a single chemical that does all of this while having zero impact on the environment, it is literally like finding a needle in a haystack.
So as we look ahead to the wide rollout of fifth-generation refrigerants and whatever comes next, we're left with this absolutely critical question. Can we keep our indoor spaces perfectly cool without warming up the planet outside? The journey from toxic ammonia to these ultra-clean HFOs definitely proves that human ingenuity is up to the challenge. Understanding this invisible blood inside our machines, it's not just about knowing how your AC works. It's really about understanding one of the most vital scientific battlegrounds for the future of our climate. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and as always, stay curious.